I carried my fiance's laptop into a repair shop expecting to lose 2 hours and perhaps a few $100s. Instead, I almost lost the life I thought I was about to begin. The technician repaired the screen, looked at me with fear in his eyes, and quietly locked the front door. Then he leaned across the counter and whispered, "Cancel the wedding. Change every lock in your house. And do not tell her what I found." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he opened a hidden folder on the laptop. The first photograph showed me asleep in my own bed. The second showed private bank statements from a locked drawer in my office. The third showed my father's estate documents. Then he played an audio recording. My own voice filled the small shop. I was discussing the value of my home, my investments, and the trust fund my father had left me. The recording had been made inside my kitchen. Without my knowledge. By the woman I was supposed to marry in 6 months. That was the moment I realized my fiancée had not simply been sharing my life. She had been documenting it. Every private conversation. Every account. Every routine. Every weakness. And somewhere beyond the walls of my home, someone was waiting for the information she had collected. I did not yet know that person was my ex-wife. I did not know the woman sleeping beside me had been paid to enter my life. And I certainly did not know that our engagement, our future, and perhaps every tender moment we had shared had begun as part of an elaborate plan to steal my inheritance. My name is Patrick Holloway. At the time, I was 52 years old and living in a quiet suburb outside Denver. I managed commercial construction projects for a regional firm. My life was not glamorous, but it was stable. I owned a white colonial house with blue shutters, maintained a respectable retirement account, and had recently become engaged to a woman named Claire Lawson. Claire was 41. She worked in marketing. She was intelligent, polished, and attentive in a way I had once found comforting. She remembered small things. How I took my coffee. Which knee bothered me after long days at construction sites. The anniversary of my father's death. The kind of music I played when I cooked. After a painful divorce and several years of lonely relationships, Claire seemed like proof that life could still surprise me with something good. I believed she loved me. More painfully, I believed I knew what love looked like. The Tuesday everything changed began ordinarily. Claire left before 7 for an important client presentation. Her silver Dell laptop sat on the kitchen counter, flickering with a blue light before the screen went black. She had complained about it the previous evening. "The display keeps cutting out," she said, pressing the power button repeatedly. "I cannot lose my work files right now. I'll take it to Tech Fix tomorrow." Her hand stopped above the keyboard. "For repair?" "That is generally what a repair shop does." She gave me a distracted smile. "Just make sure they don't go through my personal files." The request seemed reasonable. Everyone keeps private material on a computer. Tax records. Medical information. Personal photographs. I promised I would mention it. Claire hesitated for another moment before handing me the power cord. "You're a lifesaver." She kissed my cheek. At the time, I heard affection in the words. Later, they would sound like something darker. Tech Fix occupied a narrow storefront downtown between a coffee shop and a dry cleaner. I had been there several times over the years. The owner, Dave Rodriguez, had recovered files from a failed hard drive and once repaired my work tablet after I dropped it on concrete. He was 55, with graying hair, thick glasses, and the patient manner of a man who had spent most of his adult life explaining to frustrated people that shouting did not repair electronics faster. The familiar smell of metal polish and warm circuitry greeted me when I entered. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Disassembled computers covered 2 shelves behind the counter. Dave looked up. "Patrick, what did you break this time?" "Not mine." I placed the laptop on the counter. "Claire's screen keeps cutting out." Dave opened it and pressed the power button. The Dell logo appeared. The screen flickered. Then darkness. He tried again. "Probably a loose display cable." "Expensive?" "Not unless you insist on paying extra." "How long?" "Give me 2 hours." I handed him my card. "She asked that nobody open personal files." Dave nodded. "I only access what I need to test the system." "Perfect. I left to run errands and eat lunch. The autumn air was crisp. Somewhere nearby, someone was burning leaves. The city felt familiar and harmless. I had no idea that, a few blocks behind me, Dave was about to discover that my private life had been turned into a collection of evidence. I returned at 2:30. The bell above the shop door chimed. Dave looked up from his workstation. He did not smile. "Patrick, we need to talk." My first thought was the cost. The laptop is dead? The hardware issue was easy. He glanced through the window. Then he walked to the front door and turned the deadbolt. The click seemed unusually loud. "Why are you locking the door?" "So no one walks in while I show you this." The seriousness in his voice made my stomach tighten. Dave led me toward the rear workstation. Claire's laptop sat open. The display worked perfectly. A diagnostic window occupied one side of the screen. A folder directory filled the other. "I run system checks after every repair," Dave explained. "I make sure the drive is stable and that the repair didn't create another problem." "Okay." The software found a hidden directory. He pointed toward a folder labeled P Documentation. P for Patrick? That is what I think. Inside were dozens of subfolders. Bank statements. Insurance. Property. Daily schedule. Attorney correspondence. Recordings. Personal habits. The labels appeared so clinical that, for a moment, I thought I was looking at someone else's information. Then Dave opened the photographs. The first showed me sleeping in my bedroom. The photograph had been taken from the hallway. The timestamp was 6 days old. My mouth went dry. The next image showed documents spread across my office desk. Bank statements. Insurance policies. A letter from my attorney concerning estate planning. Another image showed the inside of my locked desk drawer. My father's old leather portfolio rested open beneath the camera. That portfolio contained property deeds, trust information, and investment records related to the inheritance he left me. Only I had a key to that drawer. Or so I believed. How did she take these? Dave clicked on the image properties. The metadata shows they were captured using this laptop's camera. Claire's laptop. Yes. I lowered myself into the chair. My knees had suddenly become unreliable. She has been going through my office. It appears so. Why? I don't know. Dave opened another folder. There are audio files. He selected one dated 3 days earlier. My voice emerged from the computer speakers. The trust matures next year. It should be worth around $400,000 by then. The house appreciates every year, too. Claire answered on the recording. That's wonderful, honey. Your father really took care of you. I recognized the conversation. We had been eating dinner. I was sharing personal financial information with the woman I expected to marry. She had asked questions. How was the trust structured? Who would receive it if I died? Could my ex-wife challenge it? At the time, the questions sounded like the natural curiosity of a future spouse. Now they sounded like an interview. Dave played another recording. This one captured me discussing my divorce. Margaret wanted half of everything, but my father died years after the divorce. She had no legal claim to the inheritance. Claire's voice followed. Do you think she still resents you for that? I listened to myself answer. I explained the entire history. The separation. The settlement. The timing of my father's trust. Every detail was organized and stored. Dave stopped the recording. Patrick, this is not someone keeping private memories. His voice was gentle. This is surveillance. I stared at the screen. The word felt too dramatic. Surveillance happened to criminals, politicians, and people in spy novels. Not construction managers living in suburban Denver. Why are you showing me this? Because I've seen something similar. When? 3 years ago. A woman brought in her boyfriend's computer. The system contained photographs, recorded conversations, and detailed routine logs. She claimed she suspected the boyfriend was cheating. Later, Dave discovered she had been hired by the man's ex-wife to gather evidence for a custody dispute. You believe Claire is investigating me? I believe someone may be paying her to collect information. Who? That is what you need to find out. I tried to remember every warning sign. Claire's curiosity about my finances. The way she sometimes listened to telephone calls while pretending to read. Her questions about Margaret. Her interest in my father's estate. The hesitation before giving me the laptop. All those moments had passed through my mind as ordinary pieces of intimacy. Now they rearranged themselves into something calculated. What should I do? Dave inserted a flash drive and handed it to me. I copied everything before you arrived. Is that legal? I'm not a lawyer. He held my gaze. But I wasn't going to send you home unprotected. What do I tell Claire about the laptop? Tell her the repair needs another day. She'll be suspicious. Then act normal. How am I supposed to do that? I don't know. Dave placed one hand on my shoulder. But listen carefully. Do not confront her yet. Change the locks when it is safe. Protect your documents. And cancel that wedding. You really think it's that serious? People do not gather this much information because they are planning a birthday surprise. I left TechFix carrying the flash drive inside my coat pocket. The sunlight outside seemed unnaturally bright. The streets I had driven for years looked unfamiliar. At every red light, another question arrived. How long had Claire been recording me? Had she searched my bedroom? Had she photographed medication, passwords, or personal letters? Who had hired her? What did they intend to do with the information? Most painful of all. When had the woman I loved stopped being real? Or had she ever been real at all? I pulled into my driveway and remained inside the car. The White House with blue shutters had represented stability for 8 years. Now it looked like a stage. I imagined hidden cameras behind windows. Recordings made at the dinner table. A silent audience studying the private moments of my life. My father's military-style keychain hung from the ignition. He had given it to me on my 30th birthday. Keep your home secure, he said. I had always assumed he meant the doors. I entered the house. It was empty. The refrigerator hummed. Wood settled inside the walls. I walked through each room slowly. The living room. Kitchen. Bedroom. Bathroom. Office. I saw everything differently. Had Claire opened the nightstand? Had she read my father's letters? Had she searched the medicine cabinet? The violation was not limited to money. Someone had entered every private space I possessed while I continued treating her as a trusted partner. I climbed the stairs and unlocked my office drawer. The leather portfolio looked undisturbed. Inside were the original trust papers and letters written by my father 17 years earlier. I ran my fingers across the worn leather. My father, Thomas Holloway, had grown up poor. He became a successful property developer through discipline and relentless work. At my college graduation, he told me, "I want you to have choices I never had. Money is not happiness, son. But it can give you the freedom to walk away from people who believe they own you." I had not thought about those words for years. Standing in my office, holding the evidence of Claire's betrayal, they returned with painful clarity. Claire arrived at 7:15. I was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and an open newspaper. I had not read a single sentence. Her key turned inside the lock. "Hey, honey." Her voice carried the warmth I once trusted. Now I heard performance. "How was the presentation?" I asked. "Excellent. We may land the Morrison account." She entered the kitchen wearing her navy blazer. Her blonde hair was pulled back neatly. She kissed my cheek. I forced myself not to pull away. "How did the repair go?" "Dave needs another day." Her fingers stopped above her purse. "Another day?" "He found a cable issue. He wants to test it." "Did he access anything?" "He said he wouldn't." Claire's fingers began tapping against the counter. That was her nervous habit. I had always thought it meant impatience. Now I saw fear. "I really need that laptop." "You'll have it tomorrow." "Did he say anything strange?" "Like what?" "I don't know. About corrupted files or security?" "No." She smiled. Good. The smile never reached her eyes. That night, Claire slept beside me. I listened to her breathing. The digital clock read 2:47 when I finally left the bed. I went downstairs and closed the office door. Then I inserted Dave's flash drive into my personal computer. For 3 hours, I reviewed the hidden archive. There were photographs of financial records dating back 8 months. Images of property deeds. Insurance statements. Screenshots of messages between my lawyer and me. Photographs of my work calendar. Notes detailing when I left each morning and returned each evening. One file listed: Monday gym. Tuesday project meeting. Thursday dinner with Dave. Saturday cemetery visit. She had mapped my life. Not as a partner. As a subject. The audio recordings were worse. Claire had documented months of conversations. My feelings about retirement. My father. My ex-wife. My fears about marriage. She recorded us discussing whether to sell my house after the wedding. She recorded me telling her I intended to update my will. In one file, I said, "Once we're married, I'll probably name you as the primary beneficiary. I don't have children. There's no reason to complicate it." Claire's reply sounded affectionate. "I don't care about the money. I only want you." I paused the recording. The pain was physical. There are lies designed to obtain something. Then there are lies designed to create an entire reality around another person. Claire had not simply lied about her intentions. She had used tenderness as a tool. The following morning, I called in sick. I searched private investigator directories. I checked licensing databases. I called several agencies using vague questions about employment verification. Nothing connected Claire to a professional investigation firm. Around noon, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach contract. Margaret Holloway. My ex-wife. We had not spoken in more than 2 years. Our divorce had been finalized 18 years earlier after a bitter and exhausting legal battle. Margaret believed she deserved a share of the inheritance my father left me after the divorce. She once attempted to challenge the will. The court dismissed her claim. I answered. "Margaret. Patrick, I hope I'm not interrupting." Her voice was carefully neutral. The voice she used when preparing to demand something. "What do you want?" "I think we need to revisit certain parts of our divorce settlement. The settlement was finalized 18 years ago. Circumstances change." "Not those circumstances. I've spoken with an attorney." My grip tightened around the telephone. "He believes there may have been irregularities involving the assets disclosed during the divorce." "What assets?" "Your father's trust. The inheritance came 3 years after we divorced. The trust was created while we were technically still married. We were separated. That does not necessarily end the legal question. It does when I had no knowledge of the trust and no access to it." Margaret's voice hardened. "We'll see." I walked toward the office window. "Why now?" "Because I know more now." "About what?" "About your current assets. Your house. Your spending. And the way you have used the inheritance all these years." The line went dead. I stood holding the phone. The timing was not a coincidence. My ex-wife suddenly possessed detailed financial information while Claire had been systematically collecting it. The connection was obvious. But obvious was not the same as proven. I needed evidence strong enough to survive attorneys, denials, and the emotional wreckage that would follow. I returned to Tech Fix. Dave looked surprised when I entered. "What happened?" "My ex-wife called." I told him about the threatened legal challenge. He listened quietly. "So you think she hired Claire?" "I think it's possible." "It sounds more than possible." "Possibility doesn't win a lawsuit." Dave opened a drawer and removed a small digital recorder. "I probably should not be giving legal advice. You are definitely not a lawyer. No one has ever accused me of looking that expensive." He handed me the recorder. "Document everything." "You want me to spy on someone who is spying on me?" "I want you to protect yourself." I looked at the device in my palm. It felt heavier than it should have. The relationship had become a conflict in which every conversation might be evidence. That knowledge alone meant the engagement was already dead. I simply had not buried it yet. Claire collected the repaired laptop the following morning. She thanked me repeatedly for handling it. She opened the machine immediately, checked several folders, and searched the recent file history. I watched without appearing to watch. "Everything okay?" "Perfect." Relief softened her face. "Dave does good work." "Yes." She closed the laptop. "I'll be working late tonight." "Another presentation?" "The Morrison account." "Good luck." She kissed me before leaving. I remained at the kitchen table, staring at the closed door. The recording device inside my pocket felt like an admission. I no longer lived with my fiancée. I lived with a suspect. I called Robert Chen. Robert had managed my father's estate and represented me during the divorce. His voice was warm when he answered. "Patrick. How are you?" "Not well." I told him Margaret had called. There was a pause. "That is interesting timing." "Why?" "A Colorado Springs law firm contacted me yesterday." "What did they want?" "They claim to represent someone with new information about assets that may not have been disclosed during your divorce." "Did they mention Margaret?" "No." "What did they ask?" "Specific questions about your father's trust, its creation date, and how you have used the funds." I closed my eyes. "Robert, Claire has been gathering information about me for months." "What do you mean?" I explained the hidden folder. The photographs. The recordings. The schedule notes. When I finished, Robert swore softly. "You are certain?" "I have copies." "Come to my office. Bring everything." 2 hours later, the flash drive lay on Robert's desk. He reviewed the file slowly. His expression darkened with each photograph. "This is systematic surveillance." "That is what Dave said." "Were these conversations recorded inside your home?" "Yes." "Did you consent?" "No." "She photographed locked records?" "Yes." Robert leaned back. "If Margaret orchestrated this, the legal and criminal implications are serious." "Could her lawsuit succeed?" "It should not." "That is not the same as no." "No litigation is completely predictable." He folded his hands. "The legal theory would be that your father's trust was intended for you during the marriage and intentionally concealed." "That is false." "I know. But a clever attorney can create an expensive dispute from weak facts if he has enough private material to support a narrative." "How expensive?" "Tens of thousands before reaching trial." "And if a judge believed them?" "You could face claims against part of the trust." Nausea moved through me. My father had worked his entire life to create security. Margaret and Claire were attempting to convert that security into leverage against me. Robert tapped the flash drive. "We need to determine the relationship between them." "How?" "Evidence. I have evidence that Claire gathered information. We need evidence showing who requested it and what they plan to do." He looked at me carefully. "Do not confront her." Dave said the same thing. "Then listen to both of us." "I'm supposed to return home and pretend I love her?" "For a little longer." The suggestion made me feel sick. But Robert was right. If I confronted Claire too early, she might destroy files, warn Margaret, or accuse me of threatening her. I had to remain calm while the woman who had invaded my life continued playing the role of my future wife. That evening, Claire prepared chicken piccata. The familiar smell once comforted me. Now it felt like part of the performance. She spoke about the Morrison account and office politics. I nodded. I asked questions. I acted like the man she expected. Then, during dinner, she set down her fork. "Patrick, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What happens to your father's trust if something happens to you?" My heartbeat changed. "What kind of something?" "I mean if you die." "Why are you asking?" Her cheeks flushed. "We're getting married. We should understand each other's finances. The trust becomes part of my estate." "And your will?" "I plan to leave most of it to you after the wedding." The words tasted bitter. Claire reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I don't care about the money." I looked at her fingers around mine. "How much do you know about Margaret's financial situation?" Claire's hand tightened almost imperceptibly. "Why would I know anything?" She called me. "What did she want?" "To challenge the divorce settlement." Claire's surprise appeared convincing. "After 18 years?" "Yes." "Can she do that?" "Probably not successfully." "Is she struggling financially?" The question came too quickly. I believe so. Claire nodded thoughtfully. Maybe she found an attorney willing to work on contingency. Maybe. Our eyes met. I wondered whether she knew I was testing her. She wondered whether I suspected anything. The conversation resembled an ordinary dinner. Underneath, two different battles were taking place. After dinner, Claire went upstairs to take a bath. I waited until the water began running. Then I approached the small desk she used in the living room. The drawers were locked. In 3 years, I had never known her to lock them. I retrieved a small screwdriver from the garage. My hands shook as I worked on the simple latch. I felt like a criminal inside my own home. After several minutes, the drawer opened. A manila folder lay inside. The label read, "Research Notes." Inside were printed emails, handwritten summaries, and business cards from family law firms in Denver and Colorado Springs. One document carried a heading that made my blood run cold. Margaret Holloway Consultation Notes. The document listed my routine, work schedule, financial habits, known assets, friends, attorney, travel patterns. Another document was titled, Asset Documentation Timeline. Every item corresponded to something in the laptop archive. Bank statements, insurance records, property deeds, trust discussions, will preparation, lifestyle purchases. At the bottom was a card from Henderson and Associates, family law specialists. On the reverse, in Claire's handwriting, were the words, "Discuss community property argument, concealment, current lifestyle evidence." I photographed every page. My hands trembled so badly that several images blurred. I took them again. Then I returned everything exactly as I found it and locked the drawer. 20 minutes later, Claire came downstairs wearing a robe with her hair wrapped in a towel. I was sitting on the couch watching television. "Feel better?" I asked. "Much." She curled beside me and rested her head on my shoulder. "What are you watching?" "The news." We remained that way for several minutes. The person I once loved felt familiar against me. That familiarity made the betrayal more painful. "Patrick?" "Yes?" "I love you." The words hit like blows. I looked at the television. "I love you, too." It was the final lie I told her. The following morning, I called Robert before Claire woke. I found the connection. I sent him the photographs. He reviewed them while we remained on the line. "This is strong. They plan to file soon." "Yes." "What do I do?" "Continue acting normally while we determine the full legal strategy. I don't know how much longer I can live like this." "Long enough to protect yourself." He warned me not to sign anything. Not to make major financial changes. Not to discuss assets. Anything I said might be recorded and reframed. After the call, I sat in the kitchen drinking coffee. Through the open bedroom door upstairs, I could see Claire asleep. She looked peaceful. Innocent. Nothing like someone who had transformed my home into an intelligence-gathering operation. That was what made deception so dangerous. It rarely looks like evil while it is happening. Sometimes it looks like someone sleeping beside you. I needed to understand exactly what kind of case they were constructing. So I did something Robert would later describe as reckless. I contacted Henderson and Associates using a false name. I claimed I needed a consultation regarding an old divorce and a family trust. The office occupied the top floor of a glass building in Colorado Springs. The conference room overlooked the mountains. James Henderson entered 15 minutes late. He was tall, confident, and dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my first car. He opened a legal pad. "Mr. Williams, you mentioned a dispute involving assets discovered after a divorce." I told a story almost identical to my own. I changed the names and several dates. My former wife discovered a trust established by my father while we were still technically married. Was the trust disclosed during the divorce? No. Did you know it existed? No. When did you receive the inheritance? Years after the divorce. Henderson made notes. Normally, post-separation assets are not divisible. Relief began to rise. Then he continued. But if the trust was intended for you during the marriage and deliberately concealed, there may be grounds to reopen the settlement. After nearly 20 years? It is difficult, but possible in cases involving fraud. What evidence would be required? Financial records, lifestyle documentation, proof that the undisclosed assets supported a standard of living inconsistent with the income disclosed during the divorce. My stomach tightened. Ideally, Henderson continued, the former spouse would need inside access to current financial information. He was describing exactly what Claire had gathered. Has this ever succeeded? Yes. He described a recent case involving a trust discovered 15 years after a divorce. The ex-wife received a substantial settlement. The key is documentation, Henderson said. If your former wife has detailed access to present assets and a convincing concealment narrative, she may have leverage. I thanked him and left. My hands shook as I entered the elevator. Margaret and Claire were not merely harassing me. They were building a legal case that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even if they lost, defending myself might drain years of savings. On the drive north, I called Robert. They're serious. I told him everything, Henderson said. Robert was furious that I had gone alone. Then his tone became practical. Bring your father's original trust documents. 2 hours later, the leather portfolio rested on Robert's desk. He examined each document. Then he found a letter written by my father to his estate attorney. It was dated 6 months after Margaret and I separated, but before the divorce became final. Robert read it aloud. My son's marriage has ended in every practical sense. I am establishing this trust to ensure that the assets I earn pass to Patrick alone and do not become entangled in his divorce. My father's signature appeared beneath the paragraph. Robert placed the letter on the desk. This is excellent evidence. Will it protect the trust? It strongly supports your position. He found another document. The trust restricted my access to the principal until my 40th birthday. I had no legal control over the funds during the divorce or for years afterward. Margaret cannot credibly argue you were living from concealed assets you could not access. So their case fails. Their case is weak. Again, not the same thing. No. Robert folded his arms. But if we prove the surveillance was intentionally arranged to manufacture a claim, their credibility collapses. We need Claire to admit it. Yes. And Margaret. One may give us the other. That evening, Claire seemed unusually happy. She hummed while preparing dinner. The Morrison deal is ours, she announced. Congratulations. My boss is discussing a promotion. That's wonderful. She smiled brightly. Underneath the excitement, I noticed relief. As though some secret plan was nearing completion. Her phone buzzed throughout dinner. She glanced at it repeatedly. Popular tonight, I said. Work messages. Must be urgent. Very. After dinner, she went upstairs to make calls. I placed Dave's recorder beneath a lamp beside her favorite chair. 20 minutes later, Claire returned and sat down with her phone. I remained in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes. Then I heard her say, "It's done. The consultation went well, and Henderson thinks we have a strong case." My body became still. The other person spoke. Claire answered. "No, Patrick doesn't suspect anything." She paused. The laptop repair frightened me, but the technician didn't mention finding anything. Another pause. Then she said the name. "Margaret, we're almost finished." I gripped the edge of the sink. Claire continued. "Henderson wants to file next week. I have everything. Bank statements, property records, insurance documents, and recordings. He said it should be enough to support concealment." Margaret spoke too softly for me to hear. Claire responded. "The engagement ring alone cost $15,000. We can use the house improvements, vacations, and spending to show he has been living beyond the income disclosed during the divorce." They were using the gifts I gave Claire as evidence against me. Every dinner. Every trip. Every plan for our shared future. The life I believed we were building had been converted into a legal exhibit. Then Claire said something that ended whatever remained of my hope. "I can't keep doing this much longer. Living with him every day and pretending to love him is getting harder. I closed my eyes. The kitchen seemed to move beneath me. Pretending. Every kiss. Every promise. Every night beside me. Pretending. Claire listened. I know. Just a few more weeks. Another pause. I'll copy the final bank statements tomorrow. Then. And Margaret, thank you. The money you're paying me has really helped with my student loans. Money. Margaret had paid Claire to enter my life. To seduce me. To gain access to my house. To become my fiancée. Our relationship had begun as employment. Claire ended the call and entered the kitchen. I continued washing the same plate. Everything okay? I asked. Perfect. She kissed my cheek. Just talking with a colleague. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Good night. After she disappeared upstairs, I retrieved the recorder. The conversation was clear. Margaret had hired Claire. Claire was paid. Henderson intended to file. The surveillance was deliberate. For the first time since entering TechFix, I possessed a weapon strong enough to fight back. But obtaining it came with a cost. I now knew the woman I intended to marry had once described loving me as a performance she found difficult to maintain. Robert helped me organize the evidence. Laptop files. Photographs from the locked desk. Recorded conversations. My father's original trust records. A timeline of Claire's access to the house. The case against them was strong. Robert advised me to move out temporarily and allow the attorneys to proceed. I refused. I need to confront her. That creates risk. I cannot spend another night pretending. Then do not threaten her. I won't. Record everything. I will. And have someone nearby. Dave agreed to wait at a coffee shop 2 blocks away. Robert remained available by phone. The following Thursday, while Claire worked late, I placed recording devices in the kitchen and living room. Then I arranged the evidence inside a folder on the table. At 8:30, her key turned inside the lock. Hey, honey. She entered carrying her purse. Sorry I'm late. The Morrison presentation became a nightmare. Claire, sit down. She stopped. Something in my voice warned her. Is everything okay? No. Her eyes moved toward the folder. She sat across from me. What happened? I know about Margaret. The color left her face. What about her? I know she paid you. Claire remained completely still. I know about Henderson. I know about the photographs, recordings, and consultation notes. Her eyes moved toward the door. Patrick, I can explain. I'm sure you can. I placed my phone on the table and played the recording. Claire's voice filled the kitchen. Living with him every day and pretending to love him is getting harder. Her composure collapsed. Oh, God. She covered her mouth. I stopped the recording. Those were your words. Patrick, please. Tell me the truth. She began crying. It started before we met. How long before? 6 months. Margaret approached you? Yes. How? She found me through a marketing event. What did she say? That you had hidden assets during the divorce. That you had stolen her share of a family fortune. That you deserved to be exposed. And you believed her. I needed money. The admission came out as a whisper. How much? $25,000. I leaned back. $25,000. That was the price assigned to entering my life. The first date. The laughter. The weekends away. Meeting my friends. Moving into my home. Accepting my proposal. All of it began with $25,000. My student loans were crushing me, Claire continued. My salary barely covered rent. So you agreed to seduce a stranger. She said I only needed to get close enough to learn about the trust. You moved into my house. I know. You accepted a ring. I know. You agreed to marry me. She looked up. Because something changed. What? I fell in love with you. The words should have moved me. Instead, they deepened the pain. If you loved me, why did you keep recording me? Margaret threatened me. With what? She had proof of what I had already done. She said she would expose me, destroy my career, and report me. So you continued betraying me to avoid facing consequences. I was trapped. You had choices. What choice? To tell me. I would have lost you. You lost me every day you remain silent. Claire reached across the table. I moved my hand. I wanted to tell you. But you didn't. I was afraid. So was I. Her eyes filled. I did not know Margaret planned to sue until recently. You continued after you found out. She already had everything. You were copying more statements tomorrow. Claire lowered her head. I opened the folder. Do you understand the claim is false? She said your father concealed the trust. My father created it after our separation. He documented exactly why. I had no access to the principal during the divorce. Claire looked alarmed. Henderson said the case was strong. Henderson told Margaret what kept her paying legal fees. This lawsuit is going to fail. Her face filled with horror. You mean everything I did was for nothing? I stared at her. That is what concerns you? No. She shook her head violently. I didn't mean it that way. You invaded my home, destroyed our relationship, and helped prepare a fraudulent claim. The only thing you asked was whether it would produce money. I'm sorry. You are sorry the plan failed? No. Her voice broke. I'm sorry I hurt you. Then prove it. I removed the sworn affidavit Robert prepared. Claire read the first page. Her hands shook. This says Margaret hired me to gather information. That is what happened. It describes the payments. Yes. And Henderson. Yes. If I sign, her case is destroyed. Correct. She'll know I betrayed her. You already betrayed her when you stopped treating this as business. And you betrayed me when you continued treating me as a target. What if I don't sign? Then the recordings, surveillance files, photographs, and financial records go to law enforcement. Her face went pale. I could be arrested. That decision belongs to the authorities. Are you threatening me? No. I kept my voice steady. I am explaining the consequences. You have a choice. Tell the complete truth and cooperate. Or continue the deception. Claire stared at the affidavit. Then she looked at me. If I sign, what happens to us? The question nearly broke me. There was genuine pain in her voice. Perhaps somewhere between the assignment and the engagement, she had developed real feelings. But feelings are not always love. And love is not measured only by what a person feels. It is measured by what they refuse to do to someone they claim to cherish. There is no us. Claire closed her eyes. Patrick. You ended us long before I found the folder. I really did love you. You may believe that. I know it. Real love does not record someone's private conversations for money. It does not photograph legal papers while he is away. It does not sleep beside him while preparing to destroy his security. She began crying harder. What I felt was real. Maybe. I slid the pen toward her. But what you did was real, too. Claire signed the affidavit. Each stroke of the pen ended another piece of the future I imagined. The wedding. The trip we planned. The holidays. The empty bedroom we considered turning into a nursery for visiting relatives' children. The life I believed would follow. When she finished, she placed the pen down. I'll pack tonight. That is best. Claire went upstairs. I remained in the kitchen, surrounded by evidence. The house felt like a crime scene. Not because property had been stolen. Because trust had been murdered there. An hour later, Claire came down carrying 2 suitcases and a box. She stopped near the front door. Her engagement ring was no longer on her hand. She placed it on the kitchen counter. A 2-carat sapphire surrounded by diamonds. $15,000. One of the purchases she planned to use as evidence against me. Patrick. I looked at her. I really did love you. The sentence sounded smaller now. I know you believe that. You don't believe me? I believe you developed feelings. What is the difference? Love protects the person it claims. I looked at the suitcases. What you felt never became stronger than your fear, your debt, or your loyalty to the scheme. Claire wiped her face. I'm sorry. So am I. She opened the door. For one final moment, she looked back. Then she left. I walked through the house and turned off every recording device. The silence that followed felt sacred. For the first time in months, no one was watching. No one was listening. No one was collecting words to use against me. I poured a small whiskey and sat in my father's leather chair. The signed affidavit rested on the table. I had protected the inheritance. I had stopped the lawsuit. I had ended the surveillance. Yet the victory felt like grief. Because sometimes protecting yourself requires accepting that the person you are protecting yourself from was also the person you wanted beside you. Robert sent the affidavit and evidence to Henderson and Associates the following morning. The response arrived quickly. Henderson withdrew from Margaret's case within days. His letter stated that newly discovered information created ethical concerns regarding the proposed claim. Translated into ordinary language, he realized his client had hired someone to manufacture evidence. No reputable attorney wanted the case after that. Margaret attempted to contact me. I blocked her number. She sent emails. Robert preserved them as evidence. She tried to claim Claire acted independently. Bank records proved otherwise. Margaret had paid her in several installments. Messages established the agreement. The payments began months before Claire and I met. 3 months later, I stood inside Robert's office as he filed the final documents. "The claim is dismissed with prejudice," he said. "Meaning?" "She cannot bring this claim again." He closed the file. The court also issued an order prohibiting future harassment concerning the estate. A weight lifted from me. For months, I had lived with the fear that my father's life's work could be dragged into court because someone had entered my home under false pretenses. Now the trust was protected. What happens to Claire? The district attorney declined to pursue the most serious charges because she cooperated and provided evidence against Margaret. Nothing happens? There are consequences. Her employer terminated her after learning she used company time and equipment during the surveillance. She faced a civil claim concerning privacy violations. She surrendered the remaining money Margaret paid. The prosecutor treated her as both participant and manipulated witness. And Margaret? Robert's expression hardened. She faces charges involving conspiracy, fraud, privacy violations, and witness manipulation. Will she go to prison? That depends on the court. She wants to negotiate. With me? She wants to apologize and discuss a financial settlement. No. Robert nodded. I assumed that would be your answer. She made her decision 18 years ago when she refused to accept the divorce. She made it again when she paid someone to enter my bed. I owe her no private meeting. When I left Robert's building, the Denver sky looked unusually clear. I walked to my car without checking whether someone followed. That simple act felt like freedom. For months, I had examined reflections in windows. I wondered whether conversations were being recorded. I questioned every vehicle parked near my house. Now the threat was over. The fear did not vanish immediately. Trust is not repaired simply because danger ends. But peace had become possible again. That evening, I invited Dave and his wife, Maria, to dinner. We grilled steaks on the back patio. For the first time in months, genuine laughter filled the house. No hidden recorder. No questions designed to extract financial information. Only friends. After dinner, we sat around the fire pit. Dave looked at me. "How are you really doing?" "I'm sleeping better." That is not what I asked. I watched the flames. "I don't know." Maria leaned forward. "You don't need to know yet." I feel embarrassed. "Why?" I allowed someone to deceive me for almost 3 years. Dave shook his head. "She was skilled at deception. That doesn't make me feel smarter. It should make you more compassionate toward yourself." I considered that. I ignored things. "What things?" Maria asked. Questions that felt too specific. Moments when she seemed more interested in the trust than in my father. The way she listened to calls. I told myself intimacy meant sharing everything. What do you believe now? That intimacy without respect becomes access. Dave nodded. That is an expensive lesson. It was. Then I surprised myself. I'm grateful. Both of them looked at me. "Grateful?" Maria asked. "Not for the betrayal." I watched sparks rise into the darkness. "I'm grateful I discovered it before the wedding. If we had married, Claire would have gained legal rights, access, and perhaps control over medical decisions. She might have continued working with Margaret while sharing every part of my life. Finding the folder saved me from a much worse future." Dave lifted his glass. "To broken display cables." I laughed. "To technicians who do not mind their own business." "Exactly." After they left, I walked through the house turning off lights. Every room felt different. Not empty. Mine. The office was mine. The bedroom was mine. The kitchen conversations belonged to me again. I set the security alarm and went upstairs. Inside the nightstand was the engagement ring Claire returned. For weeks, it had felt like a monument to my poor judgment. That night, I saw it differently. The ring represented an escape. A wedding that never happened. A contract never signed. A future from which I had been rescued. I closed the box. The following morning, I returned the ring to the jeweler. The amount recovered went back into my father's trust. Not because the money mattered most. Because returning it felt like reclaiming something Claire had attempted to turn into evidence. Several weeks later, my phone rang while I was drinking coffee on the patio. The number was unfamiliar. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. "Patrick, this is Sarah Mitchell." The name returned slowly. Sarah was a veterinarian I dated briefly 5 years before meeting Claire. She was kind, direct, and independent. At the time, I had not been ready for commitment. We parted without anger. "Sarah. I hope calling isn't inappropriate." "Not at all. I heard through mutual friends that the engagement ended. News travels quickly when people know only the outline. I wanted to see how you were." "I'm better." "Truly?" "Better than I expected." There was a pause. "This may be forward. I remember you being fairly direct." Sarah laughed. "Would you like to have coffee?" The invitation surprised me. Not because I doubted she could still like me. Because the idea of sitting across from someone new felt frightening. Then I remembered that fear did not always mean stop. Sometimes it meant proceed carefully. I'd like that. We met the following weekend. Sarah arrived 5 minutes late with dog hair on her coat. I had an emergency surgery. Patient survived? Golden retriever. Ate part of a towel. Ambitious. Not intelligent. Her laughter was easy. She did not ask about money. She did not ask about my trust. She asked whether I was sleeping. Whether the house still felt safe. Whether I blamed myself. I told her more than I expected. Not every detail. Enough. "I'm not ready for anything serious," I admitted. Sarah nodded. "I asked for coffee, Patrick. Not a mortgage." I smiled. We met again several weeks later. Then again. There were no dramatic promises. No rushed intimacy. Only two people learning whether honesty could become companionship. Before our second meeting, I visited my father's grave. I had not been there in more than a year. His headstone was simple. Thomas Holloway. Loving father and provider. I sat on the nearby bench. For several minutes, I felt foolish speaking aloud. Then I told him everything. Margaret. Claire. The hidden folder. The lawsuit. How close I came to marrying someone who entered my life for money. "The trust is safe," I said. "Your documents protected it." A breeze moved through the trees. I looked at his name carved into stone. "You always said money gave choices. I thought you meant vacations and retirement. I understand now. You gave me the ability to walk away from people who wanted to own me." That afternoon, I began making changes. I replaced the locks. Not because Claire still had keys. She had returned them. I replaced them because the old locks belonged to the version of my home that had been violated. I installed a secure cabinet in the office. Important documents moved to a bank vault. I updated passwords. I added privacy protections to financial accounts. Most importantly, I changed the way I treated my instincts. If a question felt invasive, I did not excuse it as affection. If behavior felt wrong, I did not silence myself to preserve comfort. Trust would still be possible. But it would no longer require blindness. 6 months after Claire left, a letter arrived. The return address belonged to a small apartment in Colorado Springs. I recognized her handwriting. For 2 days, the envelope remained unopened. Then I read it. Patrick. I am not writing to ask you to forgive me. I know I do not deserve that request. I have spent months trying to understand how I could love someone and still continue hurting him. The truth is that I loved what you gave me before I learned how to love you. Security. Kindness. A home. By the time I understood the difference, I had already built our relationship on a lie. I was terrified that honesty would destroy it. So I chose dishonesty until nothing honest remained. I am sorry. Not because I lost you. Because I made you question whether the love you offered was foolish. It was not. You were not foolish. I was unworthy of the trust you gave me. Claire. I read the letter twice. It was the first apology from Claire that did not focus primarily on what she had lost. I did not answer. Forgiveness does not always require renewed contact. Sometimes forgiveness is private. It is the decision to stop carrying someone's wrongdoing as though it remains your duty to solve. I folded the letter and placed it inside a file. Not with my father's trust documents. With the lessons I intended to remember. Margaret eventually accepted a plea agreement. She avoided a lengthy prison sentence but received probation, financial penalties, and strict restrictions against contacting me. Part of me expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt sadness. Margaret and I had once loved each other. We had shared 12 years of marriage. There had been photographs, holidays, arguments, and dreams. Somewhere along the way, resentment replaced every good memory. She spent 18 years believing my father's money represented something stolen from her. That belief consumed enough of her life to justify hiring another woman to enter mine. Greed did not merely make Margaret want the inheritance. It made her willing to become someone she might once have despised. A year after the laptop repair, I returned to Tech Fix. This time, I carried my own computer. Dave looked suspicious when I set it down. What did you find on this one? Nothing. That is what people say before ruining my afternoon. The fan is noisy. He listened. Easy repair. I smiled. That is what you said last time. Dave laughed. Then his expression softened. How are you? Good. Still seeing Sarah? Yes. Getting married? No plans. Smart. I did not say never. Dave raised both hands. Not my computer. Not my problem. I reached across the counter and shook his hand. You saved my life. I repaired a display cable. You opened the folder. Most people would have wanted me to mind my business. I'm grateful you didn't. Dave looked uncomfortable with praise. Just promise me one thing. What? Next time you get engaged, run a diagnostic first. I laughed harder than I had in months. The experience changed how I understood privacy. Before Claire, I believed complete access was proof of intimacy. Passwords. Financial statements. Every story. Every fear. I thought withholding anything meant you did not fully trust the relationship. Now I understand that healthy love contains boundaries. Privacy is not always secrecy. Independence is not rejection. A partner does not need unrestricted access to every account, document, or thought to prove devotion. Trust is not surrender. It is the confidence that another person will respect the doors you choose to open and will not break through the ones you keep closed. I also learned that intuition often speaks quietly before evidence begins shouting. There had been moments when Claire's questions felt wrong. Moments when her interests seemed too precise. Moments when her affection appeared to follow conversations about security. I ignored those feelings because I feared losing companionship. Loneliness can make people negotiate against themselves. We dismiss discomfort. We reinterpret warnings. We call control concern. We call interrogation interest. We call performance love. Sometimes being alone seems more frightening than being betrayed. Until betrayal arrives. My father left me money. For years, I believed that was his legacy. I was wrong. The true inheritance was the freedom to choose integrity over fear. The trust gave me the financial security to defend myself. But the documents he preserved gave me truth. His careful letter defeated a lie he never lived long enough to hear. His planning protected me from an ex-wife's resentment and a fiancé's deception. Even in death, he stood between me and people who wanted to use what he had built. Several years have passed now. Sarah and I are still together. We do not share every password. We do not inspect each other's phones. We discuss money honestly. We also maintain separate accounts and independent lives. Some people might consider that less romantic. I consider it respectful. When I told Sarah the complete story, she did not ask to see the trust documents. She asked, "Do you still feel watched inside your own house?" That was when I knew she understood the part that mattered. I eventually sold the white Colonial. Not because the house remained unsafe. Because too many rooms contained memories of a person who had never truly lived there as herself. I purchased a smaller home near the foothills. The windows face west. At sunset, the mountains turn orange and purple. My office has one locked cabinet. Sarah has never asked what is inside. That trust means more to me than any demand for access ever could. Sometimes I think about Claire. Not with hatred. Hatred would give her too much space in the life I reclaimed. I think of her as a warning. A person can feel affection and still be dangerous. A person can regret betrayal and still remain responsible for it. Someone can love what you provide while never learning how to love you. Understanding that distinction saved me from confusing another person's need with devotion. The laptop itself remained inside an evidence box for nearly 2 years. When the legal matters ended, Robert asked whether I wanted it returned. No. What should I do with it? Destroy the drive. You're certain? Yes. The photographs and recordings had served their purpose. I did not want a digital museum of my violation. I did not want to spend years reopening files and reliving the moment my trust collapsed. Some evidence should be preserved for justice. After justice arrives, healing sometimes requires letting it disappear. If you have ever felt something was wrong inside a relationship, do not immediately accuse. Do not act recklessly. But do not silence yourself simply because the truth might be painful. Pay attention to patterns. Protect important documents. Seek advice from trustworthy people. And remember that love should never require you to surrender your safety in order to prove your trust. The person who respects you will not punish you for having boundaries. The person who truly loves you will not need to secretly investigate whether your value is worth taking. I entered TechFix expecting a repaired screen. Instead, I was shown a hidden version of my life. I discovered that my fiancé had been paid to enter my world. My ex-wife had used old resentment to build a new conspiracy. My home had been searched. My conversations recorded. My father's legacy threatened. But I also discovered something about myself. I was not helpless. I was not foolish for loving someone. And I was not required to remain loyal to a relationship built on deception simply because some of the feelings inside it had become real. Claire believed the most valuable thing in my life was the trust fund. Margaret believed the inheritance represented a debt I owed her. They were both wrong. The most valuable thing I possessed was the right to decide who entered my life and under what conditions they remained. Money helped protect that right. But courage was what allowed me to use it. The last time I visited my father's grave, I brought no legal papers. No questions. I sat beneath the trees and told him about Sarah. I told him I had sold the old house. I told him the trust was growing and that I planned to use part of it to create a scholarship for students studying cybersecurity and digital ethics. It seemed appropriate. A broken laptop had saved the future he worked to provide. I placed one hand on the headstone. You were right, Dad. The wind moved softly through the grass. Money gave me a choice. But you gave me something better. You taught me I was allowed to walk away. That evening, I returned home. Sarah was on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one. How was the cemetery? Peaceful. You okay? Yes. We sat without speaking. The sky darkened above the foothills. My phone rested inside the house. No one was recording us. No one was calculating the value of the property. No one was waiting to turn my words into evidence. There was only evening air, honest silence, and a woman who did not need access to everything I owned in order to remain beside me. For a long time, I believed freedom meant having enough money to survive alone. Now I understand it differently. Freedom is being able to love without abandoning yourself. It is knowing the difference between privacy and secrecy. Between affection and manipulation. Between a person who wants to share your life and someone who wants access to it. Freedom is listening when your instincts whisper before the evidence begins screaming. And sometimes freedom begins inside a narrow repair shop when a technician locks the door, opens a hidden folder, and tells you the truth you never wanted to see. That truth broke my heart. It also saved my future. The wedding was cancelled. The locks were changed. The lawsuit failed. My father's legacy remained protected. And the life I nearly surrendered to deception became mine again. Not the same life. A wiser one. A quieter one. A life with stronger boundaries and more honest love. The hidden folder showed me photographs of what Claire intended to take. The bank accounts. The property. The trust. But it could not photograph what I ultimately saved. My dignity. My judgment. My right to begin again. Those were never inside a laptop. They were inside me. And once I finally trusted them, no one could steal them.